Hello, School Transportation Nation. It's Tony Corpin here on the podcast, along with Taylor Ekbatani. We've got some great conversations this week, great headlines, great interviews, and guess what? We also have great sponsors, guys. This podcast is brought to you by TransFinder, the leader in school bus routing software, the School Bus Safety Company, the leader in school bus driver training, and Ride, real innovation delivered with excellence. Taylor's going to be talking with Craig Beaver, Transportation Director at Beaverton School District in Oregon, and our 2024, the currently reigning Transportation Director of the Year. So you guys could always go back in time to that November issue, 2024. We featured Craig in Beaverton. Great conversation on what it takes to be a leading transportation director, a director of the year, in fact. So really good stuff. We got our November issue with 2025 director of the year on the front cover. You can read all about it. You go to the STN website, click on that magazine tab, read all the new info we got for you in that November issue, all about everything happening with transportation directors and leadership. There's so much in there, guys. Highly recommend you go check out the issue on stnonline.com. All right, guys, before we get to an interview with Taylor and Craig, we got a quick message. Hey guys, have you heard the news? The School Bus Safety Company has unveiled a new leadership training course to elevate safety leadership. This innovative course is a compelling opportunity for school transportation professionals to enhance safety standards and now is open for enrollment, inviting leaders to transform their operations. It's tailored for location managers, supervisors, trainers, dispatchers, anyone in a supervisory or leadership role. The course offers a robust curriculum featuring 7 comprehensive programs and a 40-question final exam. The program includes Introduction to Safety Leadership, what is safety, safety management systems, why do people have accidents, understanding human behavior, leadership principles, safety leadership's practices. Guys, I've gone through this course and it is outstanding. I highly recommend you check it out. Give the School Bus Safety Company a call at 866-275-7272 or visit their website at schoolbussafetyco.com. That's schoolbussafetyco.com.
Hello, nation. It is Taylor Ekbatani, and this is a special episode of the School Transportation Nation podcast because we get to have a long, in-depth conversation with our reigning Transportation Director of the Year, Craig Beaver, the Administrator of Transportation for Beaverton School District in Oregon. So, Craig, you're passing the torch here at the end of the month, but great to have you on and recap, everything that's been going on.
Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me. It's been an exciting year, and look forward to talking about it.
I mean, it's crazy how much actually happens in a year and how fast the year goes, right? So I came out at the end of July to visit you. I was very pregnant. I now have nearly a 1-year-old at home. So that's so crazy. But the funniest thing when I was there visiting you, you didn't tell anyone why I was there. You had not, and I haven't gotten to talk to you about this because our schedules have been so hectic, but when they actually got the magazine, were they like, Craig, you were the transportation director, why didn't you tell us?
They were, they were floored. In fact, I didn't really say anything because it was still up in the air. And then we had our annual in-service meeting at the end of August last year. And that's when my supervisors surprised me, and they had taken the award out of my office and they presented it to the 300 people in the audience, my drivers and staff, and everybody was tickled, and then they started putting 2 and 2 together, and they were talking about because they kept asking me, who's this lady taking pictures of you and what's going on and all that. And then when the magazines, we had a good source we put out there, and every time I put the magazines out, like in the waiting area for visitors, I kept coming back a day later and they were gone. I mean, people just kept taking them and going home with them. So it was pretty funny. It was good. And folks are real proud. And again, I made it quite clear that without them, none of it is possible. And I still, maintain that to this day. None of it's possible without the great drivers that we have.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I think it was funny because when I was taking the cover photo of you, you didn't tell anyone. And we had all these buses pulled out and they're like blocking entrances to the parking area. And like people are coming around, they're like driving slow. There was like traffic holding up in your little cul-de-sac of your transportation facility. And you're just standing out in the middle of the road, just waving to people. So it was good.
Yeah. And we swore that driver that we have, we swore him to secrecy. So yeah, it actually went off pretty well. So, but everybody was very pleased. They really appreciated the fact that we got some time, and people got to see the lovely Pacific Northwest and some of the things we're doing.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. What was your reaction when you saw the cover? Because you didn't know what picture we were going to choose.
I did not, and I was extremely pleased. I thought it came out really well. Again, kudos to you for incorporating the Pacific Northwest and the trees in the background. And what's funny is that I've gone to several conferences since then, and there's a vendor or two that have actually taken that and used that because we use their product. And I'll be walking by a booth and I'll look up and see me, or they'll see me and come over and take a picture next to it. And but yeah, so we were very pleased, and yeah, it was a nice day. It was good.
Yeah, it's funny. You don't realize, what comes with becoming Transportation Director of the Year, right? Your face is everywhere.
It is. It is. It's been, and it's been, good. We've been able to get the message out there about electric vehicles and propane vehicles and infrastructure. And, I've tried to do everything I can to leverage it. And School Transportation News has been just critical with that too. So I really appreciate it. And I think we've really made an impact together as a partnership in forwarding electric vehicles and alternative fuels here this past year.
Yeah, let's dive into it. What has this past year been like for you, for Beaverton? I know you said you had some speaking arrangements personally and professionally, but let's kind of just unpack the year as best as we can.
Well, I think it's best, it can be best characterized when I told my boss, I said, this is the year of implementation. I mean, we will have by March of 26, we'll have 104 electric vehicles in service. I mean, right now we're right around the 70 mark, and I'm literally getting multiple deliveries a day. Each week I'm getting, 3 or 4 deliveries each week from different suppliers, different manufacturers. It's really, the pipe is really opened up now. For so long, it was just hurry up and wait, and now it's all coming in. And so it's a real challenge just to keep that stuff, get them in service and get them up and running and that kind of thing. We're fortunate, we finally, in about a week, our last infrastructure build out will come online. So we'll have about 105 chargers. So that was a major undertaking, 3 different make ready programs with our utility, and going through that whole experience was a real learning experience with engineering and all that. And then the second part of it, just coordinating the deliveries and overcoming some of the obstacles, and with some of the tariff issues that have come up, it's made it a little bit more challenging, and so OEMs are working around those things, and so we had to kind of navigate that, and it looks like finally things are coming in and hitting it. So it's been a lot, just a lot of things piling on, and so we've really been focused on that. And another thing that we also kind of pushed forward with was propane as an alternate fuel. We use renewable propane, and so we're enlarging our footprint there with 105 electric buses. That's going to be a third of our fleet, and so we want to bring our propane up. We want to double it to about 120 buses, 120 propane. So that's another big thing, and so we're in the process of doubling our footprint for our infrastructure for that. And we've already got propane buses on order. And so, that's the next big thing. And potentially in late 26, early 27, we're pretty sure we're going to hear about a breakthrough for Type D buses, large Type D buses and propane. So we're keeping our fingers crossed that comes through. So really, this year has really been back to the nuts and bolts, just implementing, getting things up and running, getting things crushed and retired, and and then just a lot of paperwork with the federal government with the EPA grants, and then we've also had grants with the state and also with our utilities. So people say, "Gee, I never see my drivers say, gee, I'm not seeing you out driving or anything this year." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know. We've done a great job of hiring, but it's because I'm in here filling out so much paperwork that it's the most in my career I've been with so far."
I think let's provide the scope a little bit of Beaverton, right? Because you're talking about 120 electric. That's a big number for a lot of people. So how many buses are you guys running? How many routes, students transported? Let's paint the picture.
Yeah, I guess I need to take a step back. So we transport about 25,000 kids a day. We have about 39,000 kids in the district. We have about 315, 320 buses total, and 275 drivers and another 40 or 50 staff. So we're a pretty big, large operation. We have a total of about, I think we do about 250 routes, and then we have a couple dozen spare drivers to fill in. So of that, they're about half and half between regular ed and special ed. So we use the electric buses. We wanted a third, about 100 electric buses. And then we wanted a third of the fleet to be propane, about 100 propane, and then the remainder to be diesel. We always see a use for diesel because of the distances that we have to travel for athletic trips and other types of things. And, we use Type D transit style buses. So those buses can go 600 miles between fuel ups. So there's really nothing that can really lay a hand on those. So we'll always have those. We do run renewable diesel, R99, and we run renewable propane. So we're trying to limit our carbon impact. So it's a large operation and a lot of kids, and just keeping all that going and then implementing, new technologies is always fun.
Yeah. Yeah. You guys are definitely doing a lot there. And, one of the reasons why you were selected as Transportation Director of the Year was your transparency with your electric vehicles, your propane vehicles, putting all that information online, because even though, there's a lot of electric vehicles out there, it's still relatively new to the industry, right? There's not a lot of research. There's not a lot of information readily available. And what you also did was you diversified your fleet. So you don't have all of one type electric vehicle, which I think, helps kind of paint that bigger picture as well on, okay, this, I know you don't publish this data, but you have this data in the back end, this manufacturer, with this electric goes this far, et cetera, et cetera. So what was kind of your brain power behind making this information available? And I know you also do a lot of work with WRI. And so, sharing this information is really important to you.
When we started, one of the reasons we got into it, or when we decided to get into it, is because of our size, we have a lot of economies of scale. And so we knew that we'd be able to take some risk if things didn't work out on the electric side, and it wouldn't materially hurt our operation versus a smaller district that, one bus could represent 10% of their entire fleet. So we always went into that and hoping that, and that's another reason why we published everything, is because we wanted to share this information initially with just the other folks in our state, but even on a national level, so that they can make a better informed decision. And so that's why we also chose to diversify into different OEMs to try it. And, it's good that we did. Every OEM has their challenges on different levels. And I'm sure, we'll get to, there's some that aren't with us anymore. And it's good not to have all our eggs in the same basket. So we're real comfortable with that. We're evenly spread between 4 major OEMs. And we didn't really get hurt with the other OEM, Lion, who unfortunately stopped operations in the U.S. We had orders in with them, but we were able to pivot and get those orders filled by other OEMs. So we didn't really see a material issue with that. We probably ran into a 3-month delay overall is what it cost us, but that really wasn't too significant with the number of vehicles that we're receiving. It didn't really have a big impact. So, and then again, as you say, we publish everything on our website, and it's good now that we have so many different vehicles. We're able to get real good data and fairly accurate data. And we're starting to see some of the real gains in terms of, for example, kilowatt hours per mile really coming down. It's really starting to show where we're using less energy to drive farther, and where we're really starting to see those cost benefits really kick in. So that's kind of the reasons behind some of those.
Breaking into the Lion situation a little bit, that was obviously big news this past year. So you said you had an order in for Lion. So you guys don't physically have any Lion buses?
No, we didn't. We had contracted for, again, first generation buses, Type D transits. And we had even sent a team of folks down to Sacramento to one of their main service centers, and they were trained with lockout, tag out, and did some behind the stuff. So we were ready to go. And then when that didn't materialize, they hadn't begun production on any of it yet. So we were fortunate enough to be able to pivot.
And now Lion isn't supporting any of its US based vehicles due to, being sold in Canada and that kind of thing. But have you been hearing, from your fellow, what are they called? Oregon or I don't know.
We're called Oregonians. Thank you.
Oregonian. I don't know.
Oregonians. And a little bit, I'm in touch with WRI, and we on a group of folks, ambassadors, and so we've been talking about that. And in fact, we just had a talk about that, and through with the help of WRI, we're getting the word out. There's some bulletins that came out because of the fire that they had in Canada. By the way, it didn't involve the battery or anything, but still, we take that information and I get it out to the folks. For example, I know of one or two districts here in Oregon that do have Lions, and when I sent it to them, they hadn't had any updates or bulletins from Lions. So, we try and do that, and again, with the help of WRI and some of the other organizations to get that information out. Unfortunately or fortunately, depending how you look at it, Lion didn't have a huge impact in the Pacific Northwest because we, as a whole, we weren't early adopters, say like California was, because the funding wasn't available for us. So I think it's really a minimal impact in that respect in the Pacific Northwest.
Okay. Also, you mentioned, the fires that Lion was having, and we have a couple articles at scnonline.com about that as well. But kind of expanding that conversation to electric school bus fires, a lot of naysayers are kind of hesitant because of the risk of fires. And in Lion's case, it wasn't actually the battery. But what kind of training or what kind of conversations are you guys having with your fire departments up there on these electric vehicles? And also as like a sub question, what would you say to people who are hesitant to dive into the electric space?
Well, the first thing, when we first started getting our deliveries in, we brought in the fire department, and we put the vehicles up on the racks. We let the fire, and they brought in 3 different crews. 3 different shifts basically came in and looked at it, looked underneath it, crawled through it, did everything that they could do with it, to become fully aware of it. And they were very appreciative. We also had reached out prior to that to the fire marshal about what kind of equipment that we needed in our shop. And so we made sure that we had the correct safety equipment, personal protective equipment in our shop and things like that. I mean, there's a limited amount you can do when a lithium battery catches fire to begin with. And the fire department recognized that and told us what to expect. But, we have never, ever had any kinds of problems with that. And I have 15 mechanics, and nearly all of them are trained with lockout, tag out, and things like that, and then as far as from the electrical thing, we aren't touching anything that's in the high voltage section. And fortunately, we haven't had any issues with that on the whole. So when somebody asks me about that, I just point to them and point to them the fantastic safety record that school buses have. And we can speak to that because we're operating, 4 different OEMs. We haven't had any issues with anything like that, even with battery temperatures and things like that. And we found universally across all the platforms that even when things start to warm up, the bus will derate and protect itself. And all 4 across the entire spectrum have done that. So I try and relate that information to them and let them know, that yes, I guess it's always in the back of your mind, I suppose, but no more to us. It's no more than an ICE vehicle would be, to be honest with you.
Okay. And you're running in multiple temperatures. Does it snow in Oregon?
It certainly snows in Oregon. It snows a lot in some places and a little in others, but where we're at in the greater Portland metropolitan area, we get probably a good 2 to 3 weeks of snow, and we have chains on drop-down chains in all of our buses, and we have to use them every year. So we're not like Boston Public where it's 40 below out there, but it does get down into single digits occasionally. And so, but and again, I'm in contact with, for example, Boston Public and some other folks that have those severe temperatures, and they're reporting actually pretty good results as far as the electrics, how they operate in the cold temperatures as well.
Okay. Yeah, I know, in addition to electric, you kind of mentioned in the start, you guys are also running all renewables, so renewable propane and renewable diesel, choosing to go in that, healthier route for the kids. So what have you seen? I think Oregon is one of the one of the few states that actually gets benefits for renewable propane. And one of the few states that it's actually available to.
Right. So yeah. So the reason we did that was twofold. We went with the renewable diesel, and at the time we did it, this is 4 years ago, or 3 years ago. It was supposed to cost more, and at the time it was only about a quarter more per gallon. And as time has gone on and supply has increased, it's actually come down. So it's very compatible with just regular diesel. Renewable propane, again, a tad more expensive, but it's still, $1 cheaper than renewable diesel, or even regular diesel. And again, as the supply has increased, the prices continue to come down. We actually had to give up. We were able to file for clean fuel credits through the state of Oregon when we were pumping regular propane, because we own the dispenser. But we actually had to give up those credits when we went to renewable propane, because the manufacturer or the producer of the renewable propane actually gets the credit, but we get a cost reduction per gallon. Price reduction is incorporated in that, so it's kind of passed along to us. So actually, it didn't really, it cost us maybe a little bit, but the output, the emission output far exceeds it, and the fact that we've made a cleaner environment for our kids all around, we believe far exceeds it. But again, we're fortunate in that we're able to get that, especially down here. Other parts of Oregon in the high desert, for example, it's hit or miss. The supply isn't as readily. So we're fortunate because of we do have kind of a big metropolitan area.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of kind of the tax credits, another big conversation this year, I think, has been obviously the change in administration. So that has kind of come with it some changes toward electric vehicles and the funding mechanisms, the benefits there. How are you guys, I guess, first navigating, IRA? And they ended, I believe, at the end of September. So as we're recording this, it's the end of September. So they are ending today.
Today they are ending. From the funding mechanism standpoint, we took the approach that any rebate money through 45W, the IRS 45W program, was bonus money, quote unquote. Right? We didn't put that into our funding model. We went with grants and bond and district funds. So when some of the changes came out, for example, it was cut short early, it didn't really affect us in terms of not being able to afford the buses that we have. We were very pleased to see some of the adjustments that the IRS did with as far as having a written contract and making a good faith down payment would still qualify you, because as we've talked about, we were at probably some of the first buses produced when this all began, and we're still getting buses in now, and it's going to be beyond. We'll have 20 or 25 buses come in beyond September 30th. So we've taken those steps and taken advantage of getting those things in. So we believe that we still will be able to get the benefits of that. So we're very thankful that the IRS did make those allowances, and And I know that there was a lot of people involved with that, from the OEM side to the WRI folks, and probably many other folks that we don't even know about. So a big thank you to that, because every little bit helps. It's going to help with replacement, 8 or 10 years from now. And it's still going to make it an incentive for those folks that were able to do it.
Mm-hmm. And I know we knew that the Clean School Bus Program funding was eventually going to end. It had a 5-year life, but it looks like, unfortunately, that might be ending sooner than anticipated. And I know the EPA sent out a very vague kind of letter that was like, hey, you guys haven't heard from us for a little bit, but we're here. That's kind of what I took from it, but it really didn't give any details on this current round that closed. I want to say it closed in January, and awardees still haven't been announced to my knowledge.
That's my understanding also, and no cuts were included in the most recent legislation that went through. So the money is still there, apparently. I do have the opportunity to speak with the EPA in our region every once in a while, and they confirm that it's still there and it's still working. So you're right. It's unfortunate. It just came to a halt a little earlier. But what really buoys me is to see some states really stepping up. For example, Washington, the state of Washington has just embraced this. Not only incentive grant money available for the purchase of electric buses, they've also gone as far as to offer grant money for both sides of the meter for infrastructure, which I think is unique. I don't know of any other states that are offering for both sides of the meter, but it's truly impressive what the state of Washington is doing. And they've also, really gone after a training program, a technician training program as well, which is a free program that they can get involved with through their environmental department. So again, I'm very familiar with Washington. They're literally 10 miles up the road from us across the Columbia River. But I do, hopefully that some of the other states, the Idahos and the Nevadas and places around us, hopefully are also doing things. I know that there's other states also that are doing things. Oregon was trying to. We had a $20 million thing on the table in the Transportation Committee earlier this year, and I was able to go down and testify to that. And unfortunately, it didn't make it out of committee, but we're hopeful that'll come up again next year, and hopefully we'll get Oregon to pick that up a little bit and be able to fill in some of that to keep the incentives going. Personally, I think the incentives are a real key part to keeping this going, because the entry price is so steep. And I know that at some point, costs of buses will start to come down, but it's not going to be an overnight thing. And so we're all going to need some help, because it's a big ask to walk in and say, look, I need $4 million to buy, 10 buses, when that would normally buy 30 buses. So
right.
That's tough.
Yeah, we've definitely been reporting on, more state funding and looking into that. So we encourage our listeners, just because it may not be available at the federal level doesn't mean like your state may not have a program available to you.
Absolutely. And I know the Midwest is really doing a lot of things as well.
Excellent. All right. Well, we're going to continue in just a second after a quick message. We're back from ST and Expo West, and what a blast the TransFinder team had meeting everybody. They held several classes, had an amazing response to their ride and drive, showcasing their award-winning driver app, Wayfinder. One of the highlights was the top transportation teams panel discussion. The leaders of the 6 winning teams demonstrated just why their teams won. These were thoughtful leaders who listened to their teams, made changes to show how they cared, and yes, even had to make difficult decisions. As TransFinder's CEO Antonio Civitella said, it is so rewarding to honor these men and women who truly do heroic work every day. You can see how much this recognition means to these teams, and that's what makes it all worth the effort. TransFinder started the Top Transportation Teams program in 2023, and it continues to get bigger and better every year. Learn more by visiting toptransportationteams.com to learn more about how your company can join the program. Also visit transfinder.com.
So jumping in more on the conversation of changes in the landscape, right? What are your thoughts on electric school bus mandates, because a lot of states kind of picked that up, but now, with the new administration, they're kind of being halted or re kind of routed. I'm curious because you have such a wide variety.
I think, the people that I talk to, that doesn't even come up anymore. And I truly believe it's a function of again, the overall from the federal level on down. From what I can gather, it sounds like the states are cognizant to that they're not being pressed to do it, and that they're not going to get any help with funding for it. And so they are, in most cases, not going to put that pressure on us to do that. And as we know, school buses are probably the lowest hanging fruit as far as one category of heavy duty vehicles that's easy to identify and to monitor and manage. But what I'm hearing from my colleagues around the country is that isn't really a thing anymore. And other than the states that have already done it. But again, the states that are doing it are also taking the key step of funding it as well. For example, New York and California, off the top of my head, New York has a tremendously robust system that they're putting in. They keep adding to it. So at least the states where it is a mandate, it does appear that they're helping to fund them. And that's going to be the key to it. But right now, that's not really anything anybody else, at least that we're hearing out west here, is doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, also changing too is the greenhouse gas emissions, right? So during the Biden administration, I think they put out the strongest ever greenhouse gas emission regulations. And now all of that is slowly being rolled back up. And I think 2027 is still kind of in limbo.
Yeah, part of it is. Part of it has been rolled back. The CARB standards have been rolled back, which, especially on the West Coast here, Oregon, California, and Washington all subscribe to it. However, the national emission mandate on the diesel engines, as far as I know, still hasn't changed. And I know that, some of the big engine manufacturers are still have a plan to address that, and some of the OEMs have a plan to address that. So, but again, never say never. That's still a year and a half away, and we don't really know what's going to happen. But I'm hopeful, even if for some reason those did get rolled back, some of the OEMs have some great ideas of new products to introduce to the market that we're real excited about, especially on the propane front. And we're hopeful that even if the mandate does, or if the law does get changed, that they'll still proceed with that, because it would be a less expensive and a much cleaner alternative to a diesel engine. Although, as I point out all the time to people that bring this up, the diesel engines we have today are really, really clean. I tell people, just go out and run your index finger around the tailpipe and notice that it doesn't come out with black soot anymore. If you have a 2012 or 2007 or later, engine, it's completely different. It's not your daddy's diesel engine anymore, as they say.
We're going to need a video of that, Craig. I need you to go out there and we need to put that up on socials.
There you go.
And speaking of funding, you kind of mentioned this in the beginning, Craig. You said tariffs, and we've been hearing that word a lot this past year. What are you seeing or hearing kind of in terms of that?
The effects on us have been, we've seen added costs to purchase orders directly because of tariffs. The OEMs have been very forthcoming and very transparent about what is an additional cost due to tariff. They vary depending on when the order was in. One of probably the most significant things we found is that we have had delays specifically attributed to the tariffs, and that things have been caught at an entry port in Long Beach, for example, and have not been able to make it through customs in a timely manner. And so that has been a significant impact that we've run into as well.
Kind of switching gears, but not really, Craig, talking about the infrastructure. That was one of the big things that we talked about when I was out there visiting you. And I want to say you had 30 chargers, and you took me to your lot and you were like, I'm manifesting a bunch of chargers. I'm manifesting a microgrid. Like, you had really big dreams. Not to say that your dreams still aren't big, but I know we kind of talked about it, and you kind of came down a little bit. You're meeting par with maybe a vision and reality.
Yeah, we started out, again, when you were here, I think we only had about 30 or 32 charges in service. And again, that's grown to 105 now. And we originally started with, we also wanted to do a microgrid. We wanted to do a above ground storage battery, a 2 megawatt storage battery supported with solar microgrid. And we were going to do that in partnership with another company that was getting a Department of Energy grant, and that kind of hinged all on the solar part of that. And that unfortunately fell through for that partner, and so we weren't able to do it. We looked at trying to do it ourselves, but in the Pacific Northwest, unfortunately, it doesn't really pencil out with the amount of sunshine that we get versus, say, the Southwest United States or Southern California. So it doesn't really pencil out for us self-financing that. And then just going with a battery then didn't really make a lot of sense because we would be having to charge that off of the grid. And there would be a small difference in whether or not we use that battery during off-peak hours versus on-peak. So what we really pivoted to instead of the microgrid is we really went into heavy with managed charging. And it's made a significant difference where we were spending upwards of $65,000 a month on electrics, doing just an unmanaged model. We went into managed charging starting in July, and we've cut that $60,000, $65,000 down to about $28,000 a month. So we've had a significant improvement in our costs just by charging from 8 o'clock p.m. to 6 a.m. Every day. And so part of that learning curve was making sure that we bought buses that had at least close to 200 kilowatt hour or higher batteries. So most of our buses have 100, either from 196 kilowatt up to 254 kilowatt hour batteries. And so what that means is that they can, on a charge, they don't have to charge during the day. They can go out all day, run 120 or 150 miles, and come back with a 30 or 40% charge, and then charge all night on level 2s. So that's how we've gotten around that. Our next step, though, once again, as I said earlier, this is the year of implementation. Once we get everything in and all the buses in and running and all that, so the next big project for us will be going to vehicle to building. And what we want to do is to be able to power, for example, a high school gym, power the electricity, the HVAC, and all those types of things so that we can offer an emergency shelter during a time of crisis. Or if we have a blackout, we can just hold school during a blackout. We'll have 30 254 kilowatt hour battery buses. We put 4 of those buses together using two 30 kilowatt or 60 kilowatt DC chargers that are V to G capable. And we can power a building probably for days with that. I'm not quite sure how many kilowatts it takes to power a building, but I know that with 1,000,000 kilowatts, we can probably do a lot. With a megawatt, we could probably do a building for quite some time. So, and we could just interchange those buses. So that's our next thing. That's also a way for us to give back to the community as well, which was really important to us throughout all of this, is to not just serve historically underserved kids, but also to be able to give back to the community in times of emergency. So that's something else. The only thing we don't know is how deep the water can be before we can drive an electric bus in it to do in case we have a flood. So we know what we can do with a diesel engine, but we're not sure with an electric. So, and I don't know that we want to really find out, but you have to have contingency for everything.
Right. I was going to say, we're going to need you to test that for us. But yeah, so you mentioned, the vehicle to building, and I think, vehicle to grid has been a conversation, and we really haven't seen a whole lot of movement in that. I think when we first started talking about electric vehicles, it was like, yes, vehicle to grid. And that was just kind of early for the conversation. But now, as we're more and more into it, there's vehicle to grid projects jumping off in several different states. And you guys mentioned, vehicle to building. Is there anything that needs to be done, to be able to achieve that? Because I'm sure people listening here, they're like, you know what, Craig's an engineer, obviously. He knows exactly what he's talking about. He has all this background. When, you're doing your research, right? You are a transportation director. I don't think you have a background in utility management. I don't think you are, you're not sitting on the WRI side, right, with your extensive PhD.
Yeah, I count everything that I know has been self-taught, so to speak, in that I didn't go to school for it. No, I have a business degree. I don't have any engineering or any or utility degree. And working with partners, number one, with my utility has been just tremendously helpful. WRI and some of those and folks like that have really, the NREL people, the National Energy Laboratory people, just asking a lot of questions. But talking about V to G, we're actually doing a pilot program right now with our utility where we're using multiple platforms, different OEMs, and testing the V to G, and we're having success with it. The problem is that it's on the utility side, being able to take that and make that useful to the grid is a big task. And as I talk to other people across the nation that are in that field, they say the same thing. There are some projects that are up and running now, but to do it at scale is still going to take a while, and I think it hinges more on the utility side than it does our side, because we've proved that we have 3 different OEMs that can supply power back to the grid without any problems. It's just a matter of software. So it's the ability for them to monetize that, to find out how much is it worth and make it is it worth our while and that kind of thing. And then the other part of that too is the effects of the battery over the long term. But again, there's people doing that. Zoom in Oakland is doing that on a massive scale. And they, I think a lot of eyes are looking at them to see what are going to be the long-term effects. Although they do use, say, 20 to 30 kilowatt hours is all they're really pulling off of their DCs. They're not pulling a 60 or higher. So it'll be interesting to see how all that goes. But I really think there is something there. We're just a little bit too short in that curve right now.
Yeah, and we looked at that Zoom project for our Innovator of the Year, Pallav Prakash. So we did cover that story. So definitely check it out. I think that was also last year, July. So kind of in that same realm.
Excellent. Yeah. And again, there's a person that he's an open book. I've called him before. I've emailed him and just asked him questions. And that's the one thing about this industry as school bus operators and also as folks in this space is that everybody I've met is more than willing to say, this is what we did, this is what worked, this is what didn't work. And I strongly encourage, if folks that are still on the fence or just getting started, pick up the phone, send an email. People will, we'll all share what we know. Everybody freely gives information that I've run into. And I've talked to a lot of people in especially the last year, but even more so.
Yeah.
Great thoughts, guys. Let's take a quick break.
The Ride family of vehicles include the award-winning Achiever, Creator, and Dreamer battery electric school buses. The Creator is powered by STN's 2025 Best Green Technology Award winner, the Blade battery. With safety as a central focus, Ride school buses provide immediate benefits to our communities and our children. Visit ride.co to discover the future of student transportation, or email info.na@ride.co for further product detail.
So looking at technology now, Craig, as we are recording this, the FCC has also voted to stop Wi-Fi hotspots for school buses. And that has been a conversation that has been up and down this year. It was approved under a different administration, right? Now there's 3 people at the FCC, and so the vote was turned down today. I know you guys aren't running school bus Wi-Fi hotspots, but what has that conversation kind of been like out there in Oregon or the Pacific Northwest?
Yeah, it's something, Wi-Fi on school buses is absolutely something that we support and we looked at initially. Our issue was that our routes are just so short that it really didn't it didn't work out that well. It's not a real benefit, but longer routes, other parts of the state, and other operations that have longer routes, it's absolutely something that we would do if we had long routes like that. It's just, again, we always say that the school bus is an extension of the classroom. We use that in many aspects, and the Wi-Fi would be the same type of thing. So It's unfortunate if, that goes through. I think that's a huge help for students. And it was something that we would do if it made sense for us. Again, never say never, but right now that's not at the highest priority for us. But we definitely support that, and it's unfortunate if that continues to be the policy.
So expanding the conversation a little bit more on technology, when I was out there, you guys were going with student scanning. I think you guys have tablets, routing technology, all the good stuff. Where do we stand kind of with technology?
I think GPS is the absolute minimum for any school bus these days. I think you have to have that. Parents demand it. And from a data standpoint, a safety standpoint, you need it. I think more so parents want to know where the bus is at and where their child is at, not just where the bus is at, but even down to the level of, did my child get on or get off of it? And most of the vendors that have that type of software offer that they offer those apps, those phone apps, to be able to do that. And through using barcodes, which is what we do, we can scan kids on and off the bus. And the parent will get a notification, through their cell phone with it. Our challenge has actually been more of a hardware challenge than anything else. Having a barcode scanner that would be able to quickly and accurately capture the barcode, in the bright morning sun, in the evenings it gets dark, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon here at certain parts of the year. And so we've been really challenged with that. We think we found a good alternative for it. We're in the process of converting everything over. And then in addition to that, to give us the highest probability of success, we're switching over to a hard ID card, like a credit card size thing that we're going to be able to attach directly to a backpack. We're primarily focusing right now on preschool and kindergartners. Those are our folks that we're just doing every day scanning on and off. Those are the kids that the people, new parents really want to see what's going on. Our idea is next year to expand to first and second grade, with the hope that by the time, we're a K-12 district, by the time a student reaches high school, they will have 7 or 8 years of experience using this, and it will be second nature for a high school student to scan on and scan off. And again, the technology exists now for the older kids that they can actually have a phone app with their barcode on it, so they don't even need to have the ID card. They can just whip up the barcode and put their phone right on it. And again, our problems have been hardware, being able to capture that more than anything else. But I guess if we're going to have problems, that's a good problem to have, because it's probably the easiest one to solve.
Well, thank you for that recap of your technology adoption there, Craig. Another big news conversation that's been this past year is alternative transportation. And for the first time, the National Congress on School Transportation has included a section on alternative transportation in the specs manual. And I know you also don't run any alternative transportation, so I'm sure everyone listening is like, wait a second, Craig is running all yellow school buses?
Well, I tell you, this year, that is exactly the case. But prior to this year, we did use alternative transportation minimally when you compare to 25,000 kids a day. But we did have some select kids that we were forced, basically. We were unable to support them in any other way. Some of them were students that qualified under the McKinney-Vento Act that lived great distances from our district, that we were better served to put them in an individual transportation versus dedicating a school bus. We could get, for example, bigger bang for the buck, basically by using the school bus in town. So we did do that. We've been but we've been able to get away from that starting this year, for the simple reason that we've been very, very successful in our hiring. Our school board has been very supportive in keeping our wages competitive and our benefits very competitive. And so we've been able to really prosper in that area. And that's why it's enabled us to continue to hire, to be able to, if we have to put a student into a district vehicle, and in Oregon, they're called Type 10 vehicles, or vehicles under 10,000 pounds. We're doing it with a certified school bus driver in a district vehicle, and we're controlling all that. However, there are many, many districts that aren't as fortunate as us as far as hiring. that's a part of it. And so, we have to service the kids. And I know that the districts are doing that, aren't just, getting some Uber off the street. Everybody that I've ever talked to has a very defined method of doing it, making sure folks that drive those vehicles are background checked and safe and that kind of thing. And nowadays, you can have instantaneous communication with those types of vehicles through GPS and even live monitoring of cameras. So it's really come a long way, especially in the safety and the security standpoint of it. But yes, we've pivoted away from that. We expect to save over $250,000 a year by being able to do it internally.
Wow, that's amazing. So speaking of the NCST, it meets every 5 years and it produces the National School Transportation Specifications and Procedures Manual. How do you guys as a state and then as a district kind of adopt that manual?
Very closely. We have representatives that we sent. A team of 5, I believe, went from Oregon this past year, and they were active in some of the things, and some of the things that Oregon wanted, we didn't get, and some of the things that they did want, they did get. So very active in it. There's a great knowledge base in it. Our state standards manual mirrors that manual for the most part. There's a few extra things that the state of Oregon puts in, but I think that's the same for any state. It's at least that and maybe 1 or 2 extra things. The only thing personally that I'd like to see is now that the alternative vehicles or the EV specifically have come in, I would like to see a uniform identification of electric school buses across the nation, whether that be a blue bumper, for example, or some large decaling, because right now states are different. What you can do, for example, in California, you can't do in Oregon to identify a bus as an electric bus. And one of the things that the first responders and the fire department made very clear is that they wanted to know somehow if it was an electric bus or not, because again, if they have a fire on it, they're going to treat that differently than a bus that has a fuel on it.
We heard it here first. We'll see what the next 5 years. I don't know. I think there's kind of discussions right now whether it's going to be 5 years, 2 years, 3 years, what kind of looks like. But we'll see if your recommendation wiggles its way in.
It would be nice. I know that a lot of people feel the same way I do, and I know that again, from the fire department standpoint, anything we can do to identify those buses as being a little bit more special, I know is a help to them.
Mm-hmm. Before we go, I want to wrap up with some last thoughts from you, but starting with advice, obviously, and I'm not going to say everyone, but most transportation directors don't take on their roles, thinking they're going to be recognized. But what advice would you have for a new transportation director coming into this space who maybe, doesn't know the ins and outs and just wants to get their feet grounded?
I think the biggest thing we can do is to reach out to our neighborhood districts, our neighboring districts, and create a very collaborative atmosphere that you can ask, so what do you do when this happens and those kinds of things. I've been in districts or in counties before where we met, monthly or quarterly with a breakfast and just shared stories. And I can't say how many times that I've adopted either what somebody else has done or some version of what they've done, or it's sparked an idea. I think that's probably the most important thing for somebody coming in that maybe is a transportation director, but maybe not even used to that size or scale of operation. That is probably the single biggest thing. The next thing is, again, publications such as School Transportation News and some of the other ones out there are just vital. It gives an open picture and it covers so many things, with maintenance, with operations, with technology that are so important. So I can't emphasize that enough. And then the other thing is to go to expos. It's fun to go to, but it's not a vacation. There's a lot of learning. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of one-on-one interactions that you can have to really learn and make the contacts that will help down the line. I think it's vitally important at a minimum to do those 3 things, to ask, to read, and to get to know people and know the space around it, because we don't all know everything, but there's a lot of experience out there. And across the board, I've been in school transportation for over 25 years, And I have never met anybody in my life that has said, no, I'm not going to tell you that, or was unwilling to share information. We are some of the kindest people you'll ever meet and give you the shirt off of our back and are more than willing to share information and to help a friend. So that's what I would say in a quick, short burst.
No, that was beautiful. Thank you so much. And just to wrap up, any last words from you as we, as of November 1st, we are crowning a new Transportation Director of the Year. So you are the 2024. So that would be, last year.
I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. I was completely surprised and humbled beyond words at the honor that you bestowed me. And I so much appreciate it. It opened up just an entirely new world of contacts and experiences that I'll never forget, and I'll be able to use and also be able to pass along to my colleagues that they can help them use in the future as well. So thank you to Tony. Thank you to Ryan. Thank you to you. You were huge in it too. And everybody else behind the scenes at STN that I've met that I haven't been able to get their name. But thank you so much. And thank you for the honor. Again, I will forever be humbled at the honor that you've bestowed me.
And we'll still see you around, Craig. It's not like you're gone forever. We're still going to tap you to speak at the conferences. So if you guys want to meet Craig in person, you haven't met him, great guy. Craig Beaver of Beaverton School District in Oregon. We are so happy to have you on this podcast, to have had you as our Transportation Director of the Year. And we look forward to continuing to, report on you guys and stay up to date on the happenings at Beaverton.
We look forward to keeping our relationship going. Thank you very much.
A special thanks to Craig and Taylor for coming on the podcast. Really interesting conversation. Also, we appreciate our sponsors, TransFinder, the School Bus Safety Company, and Ride. Guys, don't forget to visit stnonline.com for all the latest news and analysis on the school transportation industry. Don't forget the TSD conference. We're like a little more than a week away. You can still register. tsdconference.com for the ultimate in special needs training. Come out to Frisco, Texas. Join us. We'd love to see you. Guys, don't forget, you can go on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to Pods Nation. Also, we love those 5-star reviews. Why don't you go on, click that 5-star for us? I'd really appreciate it. Nation, we love you. We'll see you next week.